Hello, and welcome to the training module over the glycemic index. In this video, you will learn what the glycemic index is and how you might be able to use it in an individualized diet plan.
The glycemic index is a measurement of the effects of carbohydrates on blood sugar levels and is measured on a scale of 1 to 100. 1 is very minimum with a slow increase in blood sugar levels, while 100 is a very quick and sudden increase in blood sugar levels. Foods that have a low glycemic index, 55 or less, such as turkey, take longer to digest in the body and are broken down much slower. Foods that have a high glycemic index of 70 or above, such as Oreos, are broken down really quickly and take little time to digest. The goal of the glycemic index is to help control blood sugar by teaching people what foods they should eat if they need to raise their blood glucose level quickly or if they need to do it more gradually. The glycemic index is a useful tool for healthcare providers to understand because it decreases the workload of the pancreas and reduces the risk for developing conditions such as cardiovascular disease and diabetes.
There are some practical tips that come with understanding glycemic index. Some people that need to manage their blood sugar level should be especially aware since it is recommended that they avoid foods with a high glycemic index. But strictly consuming foods with a low glycemic index is not necessary for everyone. In general, consuming foods with a high glycemic index is not bad, but it is recommended to complement them with foods that have a low glycemic index for sustained energy. Generally, a healthy glycemic index meal should consist of main components that are not higher than 70, with half of the foods in the meal below 50. The best way to know if a meal is on a high or low end of the glycemic index scale is to look over a glycemic index list of foods. There are a few basic principles that can help you estimate the glycemic index of a food in order to eat healthy. Foods high in fiber will have a low glycemic index because it takes longer for it to digest, causing a slow, steady rise in blood glucose levels, also allowing the consumer to feel full, which prevents overeating. These type of foods include most vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and citrus fruits with their skin intact. Protein-rich foods, such as legumes and most meats, typically score lower on the glycemic index scale. Be careful not to consume too much saturated fats from meats because that can lead to other health problems, such as an increased risk for cardiovascular disease. Healthy fats, like in olive oil, fish, and nuts, are your best bet in decreasing your risk for cardiovascular disease because they do not cause an immediate rise in glucose levels and prevent the overconsumption of carbohydrates. Ultimately, the glycemic index of a food is dependent on the other foods eaten along with it, so the general rule of thumb is to make sure the meal or snack is complex, meaning it contains complex carbohydrates, protein, healthy fats, and plenty of fiber. And finally, eating healthy every day will naturally ensure that a healthy glycemic index is maintained because the body's glycemic response is also dependent on the most recent meal. So consistently choosing complex meals and snacks will lead to a more controlled overall blood sugar.
The glycemic index of a food is changed by how that food is prepared.
We are now going to prepare a typical meal, keeping the glycemic index in mind.
We will begin our preparation with the chicken. Meats are composed almost entirely of protein and fat and contain relatively no carbohydrates. However, when working with chicken, there are several preparation options that can affect the glycemic index. For example, grilling is healthier than frying as it works to sustain blood sugar rather than to raise it.
Next, we have the potato. Potatoes are a starch, which puts them around 90 on the glycemic index scale. Foods that are white tend to have a higher glycemic index, such as potatoes and even foods with white flour or white sugar. One thing to keep in mind is how the starch to sugar ratio is changed during cooking. Heat and mechanical alteration can increase the rate at which vegetable starches get converted into vegetable sugars. Therefore, when working with starchy vegetables, such as mashed potatoes, it is important to keep in mind that mashing them raises the glycemic index compared to a baked potato. Vegetables are going to be good for you regardless of how they are prepared and maintain a low glycemic index of 55 or less. The main way to prepare vegetables are raw, baked, broiled, or steamed. With the entire meal put together, each individual food item contributes to the glycemic load. The glycemic load is the combination of glycemic index value and the total portion size. Basically, the glycemic load tells you how much energy the meal provides versus the glycemic index, which is the speed at which your body processes the sugar.
Thank you for watching the training module over the glycemic index. We hope you have learned more about the glycemic index and how you might be able to use it in an individualized diet plan.